How you going, guys? So today, with all of these ever-tightening rules and restrictions around social distancing and self-isolation really starting to ramp up, not just here in Australia but also abroad, it's becoming more and more difficult to get out and get on with your normal daily life. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not proposing that life should be normal in times like this, and I'm also very fortunate at this stage that I live in a city where the population isn't that great. Population number isn't that great. So the ability to get out and continue with landscape photography isn't greatly hindered like it would be in a much larger city. There's still plenty of areas around Canberra, both just outside of Canberra and closer into the city, that are fairly sparsely populated during the day. So today I thought I'd come out for a drive and see if I can find one of these quiet little spots and take a few shots. My main interest today is that there's quite a lot of medium to high cloud cover, and I'm really keen to see if I can find a spot where I can do some long exposure photography using a 10-stop neutral density filter and picking up on some of the motion of these clouds as they pass over the scene. So I'm just going out for a drive, and I'll have a bit of a look around and see if I can find one of these spots. Obviously my interest is to find a spot where there's no one else really around and I can continue with the social distancing measures that are really, really important in society at the moment. Anyway, enough talking from me for now. Let's go and see what we can find. So I managed to find my first location for this afternoon of long exposure photography, and I'm here down on the shore of Lake Burley Griffin, and I've managed to find this little wharf here you can see, or jetty, off to my left. What I really like about this, and I'll have a look around at the composition I can find in this image, and it's true of all long exposure images where you're trying to isolate or find a hero element in the frame, and preferably that's a really still element in the frame. So for example, this little jetty here, you could also use trees to a certain extent, or cars, or any inanimate object that can be the hero or the focus of the image. And then you're trying to tell the story of time and movement over that element in the environment. So for example, today I'm hoping to get some movement in this cloud, and that'll form some really beautiful texture in the frame when I shoot it. So I'll just set up the camera now. I don't know whether I'll use the little jetty here square on, or whether I'll try and angle it across the frame. I'll have a look at the composition as I set up, and then I'll talk you through some of the settings I've got on the camera. So when shooting long exposure photography, particularly in the middle of the day, even though it's quite overcast here today, the light's quite bright. What you need to do in order to get really long exposures is use a thing called a 10-stop neutral density filter. You can also get varying degrees of stops, 6-stop and a 3-stop neutral density filter. But what I want to do here today is use a 10-stop filter on the front of the camera. And this, as the name kind of implies, will multiply your exposure time by 10 stops. And that's what gives you that really beautiful texture and movement in the clouds in this case. What does a 10-stop filter look like? I have a couple of different filters here, and I predominantly use Benro, but this is my little 100 by 100 mm 10-stop filter. And I mount this onto the front of the lens using a filter adapter like this, and I'll just slide over and put the filter in front of the lens, and it should go fairly dark, and you can see there, so that's got the 10-stop filter on there now, and then I'll take that away and the exposure comes back to how it is without a filter on front of the camera. In coordination with the 10-stop filter, I'll also probably stack a graduated neutral density filter onto the front of the lens, and this is just to further tone down the highlights in the image and not blow out any of that texture in the sky as I shoot. Anyway, I'll go and put this on the lens now and set up to take a few shots. So I might go for a little drive now, see if I can find another spot. Hopefully again with that sort of hero element in the image so that I can freeze and then have the motion of the clouds in the background. This social distancing continues, and so far I've been able to find a spot that was fairly quiet and removed from any other people. I'll talk to you again soon. So I'm here at my second location, which again is still down by the shores of Lake Burley Griffin, but I found another little jetty that I'm using as that still foreground interest in the image. The wind's picked up a bit now, which is kind of a good thing. It means probably the cloud movement's going to be a little more dramatic, so I'll get even nicer texture in the sky above this jetty. And again with this shot, I'm using the 10-stop neutral density filter and a graduated neutral density filter in front of that. That's just to give me that long exposure on the image. I'm using a wide angle lens, shooting about 35mm, and my exposure time at the moment is about 2 minutes at f11. And hopefully this will keep all the foreground and the jetty nice and sharp, but also give me some sharpness in the trees and and the buildings off in the distance in the background. I'm getting some really beautiful side light on some of this scene at the moment, particularly the trees in the background. So I'm really keen to see how that pans out in the image. So I'm not having too much luck finding locations this afternoon where there aren't quite a few people around. So a couple of hours I've been driving around now. The light's starting to get quite low on the horizon, and there's actually a big storm front that's blown over the west, and it's blocking a lot of the setting sun. So I might go and have a look at one more spot and see if I can get an image. I'm not holding too many hopes in that happening, but we'll see how we go. Alright, so after a bit of a mad scramble up the side of a hill here, I've found the final composition or final shot that I'll probably take here tonight. I think the lights basically almost defeated me. I'm getting some really beautiful background light over there, over the top of the mountain, and that's the direction that I'm shooting here for this shot. It's been an interesting afternoon. Out doing some long exposure landscape photography. Probably didn't make the best images, but you know, it's all part of it. And it was really interesting to come out and try and still practice a bit of social distancing and make some landscape images. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little video. Please feel free to subscribe and leave your comments below. Stay safe everyone, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.